It's not every day that a country decides to replace a 160-year-old law, the very foundation of its criminal justice system. But that's exactly what has just happened in India. A legal code from the colonial era has finally been retired, and something totally new is taking its place. So let's dive in and explore the end of one era and the dawn of a whole new one. This quote right here, it really gets to the heart of the whole thing. It frames that old law not as a document for the people, but as an instruction manual for an empire. So you see, this isn't just a simple legal update, it's about a fundamental shift in national identity. And understanding those colonial roots is absolutely key to understanding why this change was seen as so essential. Okay, so for over a century and a half, the Indian Penal Code, or the IPC, was the bedrock of criminal law in India. But its origins, well, they tell a very specific story. It's a story about an empire governing a colony. I mean, think about its original purpose. The IPC wasn't really designed with Indian justice in mind. It was built to discipline subjects and maintain order for the British Empire. Now, don't get me wrong, it was efficient and it was incredibly durable, but its core philosophy was always about punishment and state control. It was, in every sense, a legal relic from a completely different time. And this slide really drives that point home. The old law was literally written in the language of empire. You had terms like Her Majesty, British India, and people were called subjects. Now, these weren't just old-fashioned words. They represented a worldview that's completely at odds with a modern democratic republic that's built on the rights of its citizens. So, all of this history was basically building up to one inevitable conclusion: the need for a profound change. This was never just about updating an old text. It was about reclaiming the very soul of the country's legal system. Over time, it just became clearer and clearer that a law focused on punishing subjects was just incompatible with a nation that values things like justice, reform, and the welfare of its citizens. The colonial soul of the IPC just didn't vibe with modern India's constitutional goals. And just let that number sink in for a second. Over 160 years, a law from the 1860s was still the legal operating system for a 21st century digital powerhouse. The sheer age of the code makes this overhaul a truly monumental task. It's kind of like trying to replace the foundation of a skyscraper while it's still fully occupied. So what does this reimagined justice actually look like on paper? This is where we get into the nitty-gritty, comparing the old Indian Penal Code, the IPC, with the new Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or let's just call it the BNS to keep it simple. This table gives us a great at-a-glance look. First off, notice it's been streamlined. The BNS is way leaner, dropping from 511 sections down to 358. Second, there's a huge cultural reset. All those colonial references, gone. And finally, and this is a big one, look at the punishments. The BNS now includes things like community service. That's a massive philosophical shift from the old model. And that right there brings us to the key philosophical upgrade: restorative justice. For the first time, for certain minor offenses, the BNS changes the entire focus. The goal isn't just to lock someone up anymore. It's about repairing the harm that was done, both to the victim and the community, and ultimately trying to reform the offender. It's a whole new way of thinking. And this slide shows that new philosophy in action. It makes it super clear. Under the old system, the IPC, that student might have faced actual jail time. But under the new BNS, they might get a sentence that actually serves society, like cleaning a public park. It's a fundamental move from justice that just punishes to a justice that tries to heal. Now, beyond philosophy, the BNS is also about catching up with the times. The world of 1860 didn't have the internet. It didn't have organized crime syndicates, and it certainly didn't have deepfakes. The new law had to get with the program. This chart kind of helps you visualize where the new focus is. If you look at the bars representing the BNS, you can see a major expansion in areas like tech-related crimes and whole new categories for organized crime. The law is basically being re-engineered for the challenges of today, not the 19th century. And here are just a few concrete examples of what's new on the books. The BNS now has specific offenses for things like cyber fraud and even deepfakes. It formally defines and goes after organized crime. And in a really major move, it replaces that controversial colonial-era sedition law with a more specific clause about acts that threaten the nation's unity. But it's not just about adding new crimes, The BNS also tries to clarify some really complex legal ideas that were already there. For example, what happens with joint liability? How does the law handle a crime where a bunch of people work together to make one bad thing happen? This illustration, and it's taken right from the text of the BNS, makes it crystal clear. So, A and B both plan to murder Z. Even though they performed separate acts at different times, they were intentionally cooperating towards the same criminal goal. So what's the result? The law holds them both equally guilty of the final crime, murder. It's a really powerful principle of shared responsibility. Okay, so the new law is passed. It's on the books. But implementing a change of this scale is a journey, right? It's not a single event. And the road ahead, well, it's filled with some pretty big hurdles. I mean, first you've got this staggering logistical challenge. We're talking about retraining more than 2 million police officers and thousands of judges. Then there's going to be a messy transition period where courts are dealing with cases under both the old and new laws. And, like with any powerful new law, there are real concerns about making sure the new clauses aren't misused, which will need some very careful judicial oversight. But even with all those challenges, the vision behind it is pretty powerful. This quote really captures the ambition here. To uproot the ghost of Macaulay and plant the seeds of a justice system rooted in Indian soil. It's about more than just changing the text. It's a conscious effort to decolonize the justice system and create something that feels truly Indian in spirit. So ultimately, what we're witnessing here is a nation daring to reform not just its laws, but its entire legal imagination. The structures are new, the philosophy is modern, but the ultimate test, as always, is going to be in how it's applied on the ground. Will this monumental shift actually deliver on its promise of a more just, modern, and inclusive system for every single citizen? Well, I guess only time will tell.